This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Over the course of 2 volumes of Butch Heroes, artist and author Ria Brodell presents the reader with portraits of 43 individuals. You've probably never heard of any of them. Of the 43, I had previously been aware of only one. On my queer bookshelves, I have a copy of a thin volume of the autobiography of Antonio de Arauso, although the book refers to them as Catalina de Arauso, the so-called lieutenant nun. Here's what the back cover says. One of the earliest known autobiographies by a woman, this is the extraordinary tale of Catalina de Arauso, who in 1599 escaped from a Basque convent dressed as a man and went on to live one of the most wildly fantastic lives of any woman in history. A soldier in the Spanish army, she traveled to Peru and Chile, became a gambler, and even mistakenly killed her own brother in a duel. During her lifetime, she emerged as the adored folkloric hero of the Spanish-speaking world. And some of Brodell's portraits are of flamboyant figures like this, and others are just ordinary people, living their lives, doing their jobs. Brodell's work in excavating these stories both illuminates and counters a hard truth. Marginalized peoples are routinely erased from the narratives of history. We're seeing a resurgence of this now as the MAGA movement strives to remove any mention of LGBTQ or BIPOC voices from the curricula. Brodell's project started with a desire to find individuals like themselves in history from the introduction of Butch Heroes Volume 1. For this project, I was looking for people in history with whom I can identify personally, people who were assigned female at birth, had documented relationships with women, and whose gender presentation was more masculine than feminine. I searched for people from diverse ethnic, societal, and geographic backgrounds, and who were born before or around the turn of the 20th century. Some of my subjects identified as women, others as men, some shifted between gender presentations throughout their lives, while others embodied both simultaneously. I used the narratives of their lives to establish their place in this project, and though some could be identified today with the terms lesbian, transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, intersex, etc., these myriad LGBTQIA terms were not available to them during their lifetimes. Since it's impossible to know exactly how each person would self-identify, using today's terminology, I view this project as an ongoing effort to document a shared history within the LGBTQIA community. These books, the 2018 Butch Heroes and the 2025 More Butch Heroes, are a rare combination of significant and beautiful. And I'm so grateful I got the chance to have this conversation with Ria. Hope you enjoy it.
They're also known as prayer cards, and I don't know, lots of different terms for them. But they were just special visual objects that I really liked. That I guess I can't remember the first time they were just such a part of my life, like laying around places. Like you keep St. Christopher in your car.
Right.
You got in addition to medals and relics and all that stuff,
you got St. Anthony looking for your keys.
Exactly. Yeah. So the prayer cards or the holy cards were part of my life from early on. And my Aunt Monica, she collected them. She would send out, I don't know how exactly she went about it, but my understanding is she would write little things and have them published in newspapers, like asking for them to be sent to her. And I don't know if she traded or what she did, but she had tons of them, like boxes and boxes and boxes. And her and my other Aunt Amy and I and my grandma too sometimes would just sit with them, and they would tell me the stories of the saints. And I just loved the imagery. I loved all the imagery, even sitting in church, I like the statues and the stained glass windows, but the holy cards in particular, because they involve stories, and each saint has their little, the thing that they're known for helping with. And that
Right.
was part of my childhood too. Like you mentioned St. Anthony, like my grandma was always telling us if we lost something to pray to St. Anthony and various other things like that. So they were, in addition, I mean, I think they're used for me. They were like I was taught about the saints through them. There was also a dictionary of saints involved. In addition to that, they're given out. Like they're given out. I got a number of them when I made my first communion and my reconciliation and confirmation. They're, part of weddings and definitely part of funerals. My grandma would send them to me in the mail if I was having a hard time with something or another.
You tell a story, I think it's in the second volume, of your grand sending you a St. Jude card at a
Yeah.
point when you really needed it.
Yeah, and I was really confused because I didn't quite know who St. Jude was. And I was like, who's St. Jude? But I kept coming across St. Jude and I looked him up and it's like the patron saint of lost causes. And I remember being like, damn, Gran, like, do you think of a lost cause? But
Thanks for the vote of
but I
confidence.
don't think that's what she meant. I never talked to her about it, but I think it meant that like, it was hard times for me and that it wasn't a lost cause, that I would pray to St. Jude and it would be better. But that amused me. So,
Well, before I transitioned, my confirmation name was Jude
oh, cool.
because of that. The idea that there was somebody who looked after lost causes and, hopeless cases
Yeah.
really, really appealed to me. And so I that was my confirmation name.
Yeah, that's cool.
Let's backtrack just a little bit and introduce yourself, if you would.
Oh, sure. I'm Ria Brodell, pronouns they, series. Yeah, I currently live in Boston and made the Butch Hero series, which started off as a painting series. For the last number of years, I've been primarily a painter. But I also teach. I teach at SMFA and Mass Art here in Boston and various other places now and then.
Your approach to this project, which has been going on for what, 15 years or so now?
15 years, yeah. Yeah.
Started as a way for you to look for reflections of yourself in history and then kind of evolved as that period went over.
Yeah, I would say it started as a way to learn more about our history because I just got curious. Like I was doing a different series and I was like thinking about the past and I was like, hold on, like we existed. What were we doing? Like what was happening back then and like what were our lives like? Because I had like imagined myself back in that time, like purely imaginative. And then I was like, no, like there's real people that lived lives in the past. So who were they and what did they do and how'd they get by and how'd they find each other, that kind of stuff. So that's how it started. I was looking to kind of transition out of that project that I'd been working on and wanted to start something new. And so it started with that curiosity of like, what was our history made of? Like, could I find people? I started out at the public library, and I realized that I needed to set criteria because I wasn't interested in like painting everyone and everybody that I could find. I wanted it to narrow it down. Because, as an artist, I was told or have been taught over the years that like if I not necessarily stay within my scope, but if I make it personal, then it resonates like on another level. And that's how I had approached multiple series in the past. And so I was like, well, I know we have, I'm finding that we have a big queer history, but I kind of want to know like, okay, like if I set criteria, like maybe it's like, how would I have lived, back in the day? Like, so I started to look for folks that had similarities between, myself and them. So I started to find folks or look for folks who were masculine presenting, assigned female at birth. Early on, it was important like that I could find some sort of relationship status because sexuality was also important, queer sexuality. That shifted as the series went on, but but it maintained like signed female at birth and masculine in some way or another.
I mean, certainly this over the span of the two volumes, there's a lot of intersectionality. These
Mhm.
are these are folks whose stories just are not told, and I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
But let me stick with the research for a second.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding all these people whose stories are not part of the record? Where do you look? How do you? I mean, you can't just Google that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you can now, but
Now I can, but like in the beginning, like it started in 2010, so social media was pretty young, and now there's dedicated social media accounts to trans history, and various other like archives are on those accounts, and there's just a lot more now. But at the time, it sounds silly, but there wasn't really like I just went physically to the library and I started looking at books on queer history. So that was kind of frustrating because it was a lot of generalities, but I needed to start somewhere. So starting with those general books on queer history, like quite literally, I even picked up the like that encyclopedia that exists. I can't remember who I used to know all of the. It's been so long now, I forget. I used to have all the author names like memorized, but um, yeah. So finding books and then just skimming, like scanning through, and often in the beginning it would just be like for people who were assigned female at birth, there was often just like a paragraph here or there. And I'm like, even I'd be looking in the contents just to see if there's like a chapter at least. And like, but most of it was very male centric, very cis centric. So that was tough. But I would then, once I'd find a paragraph or a little blurb, then I could see like, okay, who wrote that? And like, do they have other books that I could look up, or can I email this person and ask like, hey, I'm looking for this kind of thing. Um, and then just looking at bibliographies, and that led me to like archives. So then I was like looking in physical archives and newspaper archives and journal archives, like people's dissertations, published and unpublished, like
wow.
writing to people and asking, if I wanted to find, especially for certain regions where I wasn't finding as much, because it was very important to me early on that these were real people. So it was very important to find names and dates, because I did find a lot of like myths and legends, and that I wasn't interested in doing because I wanted to um, show that we have existed through time and that our stories are real. And that seems ludicrous, but it was important. And now it's even more important. There was a period of time where I was like, of course we're real. Um, but
I paint, therefore I am.
yeah, totally. Then yeah, so finding the names, that would get frustrating. Like there's a couple times where I got drawn into a story and would find out that that was a made up story by somebody, and I was like, that sucks. Um, Actual names was really difficult, like finding the names rather, because a lot of people, they would just be like, oh yeah, I heard of this person, not name them, they did this, they lived here, no dates. And I'm like, well, I got nothing to work with there. Like I need, you know.
Well, a number of the portraits that you have are of people who lived in remote places or times. I mean, some of these go back a ways
Yeah.
where you don't have the sort of record keeping that we have now, or the the people that just grabbed my heart were the ones who would exist out on the fringes of the civilized world because that's
Yeah.
where they could just live a life and be a
Yeah.
farmer or a miner or a trapper.
Yeah, totally. And I think that that's I learned so much through this process, like learning that like the Wild West was like we were a huge part of that because I was like, oh, I can go out there and remake myself. Like
Yeah.
no one's gonna give a damn. And that's what happened. There were so many of us that like at least in the United States. And then yeah, that was fascinating. And yeah, just like finding those stories, and then knowing too that there were so many like trying to go as far back in history. Like I think the furthest back was Hetzeldorfer in 1477, and I couldn't really get like further back than that without some without hitting like ambiguity, without hitting like, okay, was this real? Like there's just not enough information. And the reason I could find those people way back is usually because there was some sort of notoriety that they achieved. Many of them, I shouldn't say just all the way back in history, but there were a lot of people I could find because of the notoriety that they achieved. So that simultaneously was like, okay, great. Like I can find them because of this trial record or this big thing that happened in their life, some discovery. And that the flip side of that, I realized that like there were probably hundreds and thousands of people that I'm not finding because they just, like you said, lived their lives on the outskirts and got by and didn't have to, you know, weren't discovered or weren't published or weren't put on trial. So
This episode of Transqat is brought to you by Goodspeed Musicals. Goodspeed is a non-profit theater known around the world for producing high-quality new and classic musicals. Overlooking the banks of the Connecticut River in East Haddam, the Goodspeed is one of the most scenic destinations in the state. You still have time to catch some of the 2025 season. White Christmas the Musical runs November 11th to the 28th. Also, the Goodspeed has announced its 2026 season lineup. It opens with Jesus Christ Superstar in April, followed by Crazy for You, Gershwin and Tap Dancing, The Snow Goose, a world premiere, and Annie, which will celebrate its 50th anniversary of debuting on the Goodspeed stage. Learn more at goodspeed.org.
Right. And that's something that becomes very clear by the end of the first volume, is that these stories exist really in one of two contexts. Either they are caught and punished, and some of these are horrific. I mean, you almost need a reader warning on the cover because some of it is pretty grim.
Yeah.
Or much more interesting, although perhaps less sensational, is the deathbed discovery.
Right. Yeah, where they're just like, they live their life the way they wanted to live it, and then afterwards everybody's like, what the fuck?
Hey, wait, between the legs, no.
Yeah, totally. And that too was like, okay, sometimes it got like I always talk about Captain Wright, who seemed to have like this really cool life where they were accepted and like seen as like a jovial fellow who was like super fun to gamble with and like drink with and party guy. And then after he died, the first article is kind of like, oh, Captain Wright died. It's pretty normal. And then it gets gross. It gets where they're like calling him a creature and there's like lines to see him. So there's that one. And then there's other ones like Joe Monahan, where everybody was like, oh, why'd he do this? But then now thinking back, like, okay, yeah, I can see it, but like, who cares? Let's give him a nice funeral anyway.
Yeah. Well, it makes you, as you're reading it, at least for me, start wondering, for how many of these people was this desire to pass as masculine? How much of that was intrinsic, and how much of that was just the time where you couldn't do whatever it is this person did for a living,
right?
If you were known as a woman. And so kind of the Shakespeare thing, right? All of Shakespeare's women cross-dressers are doing it for a very specific reason, and it's not intrinsic what we think of as trans.
Yeah, and I remember, that's interesting that you bring that up because I'd kind of forgotten about that argument. Like, I remember when I started the first volume, I was reaching out to people like historians and queer historians too, and I got pushback. They were like, well, those people aren't queer, they're not trans because they're just cross-dressing. They just needed to make a living. And I was like, what, like, why is that a disconnect? Like what, like they might have been queer. Like, why is heterosexuality always the drop down, and why is cisgender always the drop down? Like, why can't we accept that they might have been queer, or they might have been trans?
Right.
So
yeah.
That was frustrating.
You get people making assumptions on either side, right? So the cis community looks at that and lumps us all in as these aberrant people.
Yeah.
And then part of the queer community looks at that and goes, well, no, not
Yeah.
this one and this one will claim, but not those seven.
Yeah, exactly. It's very strange. And so I was very that that I think is why I was so regimented in the first volume about like names, dates, like proof. This person is, as much proof as I could like muster.
Yeah.
No, there's gonna be some because it's history, but I was so like, no, these these people are like they're queer and trans, and here's the proof.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
There's
but
more. There seems to be more storytelling in the second.
mhm.
Some of the text pieces get a little longer, and I really found that I was ready for that. I had come away from the first thinking, wow, look at all these cool little stories throughout all of history. But I was ready to sink my teeth into something a little longer, and you give us that in volume two.
Yeah. Yeah. The first volume, like much of that is just like what I had available. Like so many of the stories are just I don't know the rest. Like I gave you what I give you what I can because that's what I could find. So some of them are super short. Um, and then some like were so epic that in the first one, because I was publishing it myself, the first one was self-published, and then MIT Press picked it up, and they just took mine, and I think they were on a deadline, and they just ran with it. Um, so in the second one, they were like, you can like if you find more, like don't edit it down, like you can like tell us everything, like don't, I was like, oh, okay, so like that's why like for Esther Ang and for like some of the others, they're like multi pages in there instead of just summarizing it to one page.
Oh my God, Esther Eng was so amazing.
I know.
There's two aspects of that story, but the cinema aspect,
I know, yeah.
never even heard of them. And
Oh no, and it was so I was pissed. I was like, why haven't I heard of Esther Eng?
right.
Like, come on.
So there are a number of themes that come up regularly, but before we go there and we talk
Yeah,
about some of the individuals, I do want to talk about the art. I'm
sure.
not an artist. I am a long time graphic novel fan, comic book fan. So, and your artwork does so much heavy lifting here. You've got. I mean, I came across as really appreciating textures,
Mm,
and you can see in a lot of them, you can see the historical research that you did outside of the individual.
that's
Some of
good.
Let me
Good.
just grab my notes here. So for example, all right. So Samuel Pollard was a miner,
Yeah.
and you've got a candle in his hat,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, okay. So clearly, as you ran down those rabbit holes of, okay, is this person real and legit, and what can I back him up on? You
Mhm.
also seem to have done quite a lot about, like I said, the candle in his hat,
Yep.
the regalia that Woman Chief is wearing
Yep.
is
Yep. Yeah.
gorgeous.
It is. Yeah.
So how much of that did you
I
extend
mean,
your research to?
yeah, that was the best part. Like that was because that's like I'm a visual person, and it's like it's a painting project first and foremost. I didn't even think it would go as far as two published books. That's just like what? Like initially, I'm making it because I'm like, okay, I have a show coming up. What body of work am I gonna start making? Like, what do I want to focus on? And so I'm making paintings. Like I knew that I wanted to use gouache on paper because I wanted them to be in the style of Catholic holy cards because I didn't know at first what style I wanted it. Like I was making the past series that kind of led me to this with little vignettes, like, and some of them were like that. Like I found Antonio Arauso, for instance, like the Spanish swashbuckling nun who like
Yeah.
went to South America. I found them pretty early on, and so first I was making these like vignettes of us sword fighting, or we're both dressed in the conquistador type outfits, and we're sitting on a little bench together, sharing like small talk, and then I was like, this isn't working. Like I don't want to just do the same thing again. And so I was reminded of my holy card collection and my aunts and the stories, and and they're portraits. Those holy cards are portraits of each individual to like teach you that about that person's life. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. And so I knew I wanted to use gouache because it's nice and bright. And
And what is gouache? Just
gouache is opaque watercolor. It's like if you've ever seen like Indian miniature paintings, Persian painting, they used opaque watercolor. And I knew I wanted to use that. And so I scaled it up. I scaled each, like holy cards, they're about 2.5 inches by maybe 1.5 inches. So I think I scaled it up 3 times. So the paintings themselves are about 5.5 by, I don't know what that is, 9 something. So
okay.
they're pretty small. And on a piece of paper that's about 11 by 17. So then I'm like, what I'm doing is after I'm finding the person, I'm thinking about what aspect of their life do I want to depict, like what's part of their story that I want to show because I get one visual.
Right, right.
So, so yeah, it's not like I'm animating them so it's like that was hard, but it was also really exciting. So I would just kind of like make bullet points and I'd be like, okay, well, I liked often it came down to the occupation. Like with Samuel Pollard, I was like, he's a miner. Like I haven't painted a miner before. That's cool. Or like a lumberjack or like, and their jobs were really important to them, like
Yeah.
often I wanted to show them working because like that was such a big part of their life. Or sometimes it was like I wanted to show them just like chilling with their partner or
Well,
that
one
was
of the things that this was really compelling in the first one is I was wondering how you decided when to portray somebody's life and
yeah,
when to portray somebody's death, because there is, I mean, fair warning, there is
yeah,
some graphic stuff in here, and
yeah.
the first page that I opened to when the book came across my buying table
Uh-huh.
was Hetzeldorfer.
Yeah, because like
And
it's chronological order. So yeah,
yeah, and it's startling because
yeah,
Katharina's death was not a pleasant one.
yeah. And
Maybe
that
you could
goes back,
describe to folks.
of course, yeah. So sometimes it was the moment of their death because that was the most significant part of their story. Because with Hetzeldorfer, it was a punishment that was specifically chosen for them, because gender transgression was what they were like accused of, or like the sexuality part, the town, the village didn't know what to do with that. They were just kind of like, oh, we don't know. That doesn't happen here. But the biggest issue is that Hetzeldorfer was taking the place of a man and was seen as threatening. So they punished Hetzeldorfer by drowning them. And that was a punishment at the time reserved for women and children. And so that was like kind of that town's way of reinserting the proper gender onto Hetzeldorfer. And so that was a huge part of the story. And because I really had nothing else, I knew nothing else about their life. Like there was nothing I could find other than that trial and punishment. And so that immediately, and the style that they're in, they are graphic and violent because that was what was done to them. And that's part of the lineage too of Catholic holy cards and Catholicism in general. I mean, we stare at Jesus on the cross that's being
Right.
so, and that is meant in Catholicism to show your strength and your convictions. And so every time I was making the decision to show their death or the moment before their death, I was reminded that this is not glorifying violence. It's a way to show how strong these people were and how dedicated they were to who they are. Like, to just, to like show, I think of like the Holy Card of Saint Bartholomew, where he is skinned alive and he's always stands there, sculptures and holy cards, and he's just standing there with dignity, like holding his skin in his arms. And it's funny. I love that stuff. I
Well,
find it
there.
hilarious because I'm like, so I was kind of playing on that. Like, he's like, you can do whatever you want to me, but I'm still standing proud of who I am and my beliefs and, my convictions. And that's what I was trying to get at. Like, so there's a few of them like that where it's like Hetzeldorfer, Oldstetter, um,
Anastasius is beheaded.
yes,
And we
Yeah.
just sort of see him standing there.
Yeah. And like there's an element of, for me, I don't know if all Catholics would find it humorous, but I always did. And I know my grandma did, and my aunts would always be like, look at this one. She's got her eyes on her plate. Like it's just like funny. Agatha too, with her, breasts on a plate. Like there's just an element of humor in that violence, but it's also dignity. And so sometimes the death dictated like it just needed to be there. But other times I wanted to just show them doing their job or like, and so then the research would involve everything. Like what did their clothing look like? What sort of color scheme? What did the fabrics, were they colorful? Were they textural? Were there patterns? What did a loom look like? Mining gear, like they didn't have electricity or light bulbs, so like they had candles in their hats.
Well, that was my, when I saw that, I was like, what is going on there? Oh, yeah, obviously, there's no electric light.
Yeah, candles. Like, so, I had somebody like pushed back on that. They were like, why'd you got a candle in his hat? That's so dumb. And I was like, dude, real life, that's how it was. But it's, that was super fun for me, doing the research into clothing, into like the landscape, into the process of their job, like plastering to like weaving, Japanese painting and printmaking. I got to look into that, like all the things. That was really cool. Like once I could determine what I wanted to show, then I was like, all right, like how much do I need for this? Like, where can I find this information? I tried to get as accurate as I could. So like some more than others, like, it just depended on what was available to me. Like Ulfstetter, who was beheaded in the Haymarket in Sweden, like I could really dive in because there were just so many resources. Like I could look at maps and from the same year that Ulfstetter was beheaded, and I could see like, okay, well, this is the Haymarket, which is still in that same location in Stockholm. I could look at the maps from the 1670s and see like, okay, like in the background from this angle, you'd see that church and you'd see that palace and you'd see this thing. So then I could like put that in, because there were also like etchings and drawings of those buildings. And then there were I relied on a lot of other historical artists too, like especially the people who painted working class folks like Millet and the Dutch painters and printmakers. Like at that, for Ulfstetter, there was an artist traveling through Stockholm in the same year that they were executed, and he was making, I think he was Italian, and he was making ink drawings of like little thatch roofed cabins and people in their clothing. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like I can, Then I was like, okay, what did they sell in the Haymarket? And it's like winter vegetables and stuff, of course. So
there you go. Yeah.
It was really fun to put that one together because I had so many resources, including the chopping block, which was crazy.
Hi, folks. It's Clare interrupting. I'll keep this brief. Please consider donating to support the show. If you go to transqat.com, that's transqat.com, hit the support button and then donate. You can also visit the Transqat store and support us that way. And if you're a business or an organization, please consider sponsoring the show. Thank you for your support.
But yeah, like other times, it was a lot simpler. Maybe I just wanted, like, even like with Hetzeldorfer, I kind of had to rely on my imagination because drowning.
Well, they're holding this enormous boulder that has been secured to them by thick ropes. And I mean, it's gruesome, as it should be. I mean, if I imagine dying that way must have been horrific. Well, you also get to show off with what I assume is a love of animals, because there are a lot. Yep. There were a couple of, many of them fit into the description, and like, yeah, that's why this is here. But I was very happy to see that there were some gratuitous cats.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And some of them, not even like with Okahara Seiko and Watanabe Sirin, they found cat prints on their paintings and prints. So I was like, well, I got to put the cats in the painting. So And that was great. I tried to incorporate any animals whenever I had the opportunity to put them in there. I'm like, I bet that place would have chickens. I'm going to put some chickens in the background.
And was that a challenge, or was that, oh, I've got an opportunity to draw this ox sitting on the ground here?
Oh no, it was an opportunity. It was definitely a challenge. Like the horses, like
Mm.
Pedro Ruiz, like riding the horse in the Mexican Revolution. The horse, it was those they're tough to paint. Yeah. How did I do that? I grew up in Idaho and I have a we're not like super close friends. I don't know, like at this point we're kind of acquaintances, but we went to I think junior high and high school together. And she's always posting pictures of barrel racing, and I was able to look at her photos of barrel racing to help me with the horses.
One of and these do show up in some of the paintings, but one of the themes that I wouldn't have expected is that a number of these people were married to women or had long-term relationships with them.
Mhm.
And it would seem that maybe the partner didn't know. And so
Yeah.
one of the recurring themes is, let's say, there were a number of different terms that come
Yes.
across. Where we go? Okay, so device, contrivance,
Yeah.
instrument,
Yeah.
tool.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yeah. That was fun. I actually did a side like I would keep I should have done a better job of it, but occasionally I would bookmark things like, oh, okay, here's another term for that. Oh, here's another term. Okay, like, oh, this is what they made it out of. So I had a little notebook, and I remember my partner at one time was like, we got to do something with all that stuff. That's hilarious. Like, let's make a zine or something. And so we did. We made a zine together on like, um, what did we call it? I can't remember, but I still have some copies. But yeah, I don't know. That was a question. Like, how many of them didn't know, like, really didn't know? How many of them did know and had to say they didn't know to protect themselves?
I mean, I know I was a Latin teacher, and I know there was an ancient Greek word for
Mhm.
such a device. I want
Yeah,
to say the
lifeless
word.
instrument.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Olispo was the word. That was kind of a one that would start conversations. I felt that it was
Yeah.
like because it's definitely a running theme of
Yes.
deathbed discovery things.
Yep. Yeah. It was fun to find out. Like, because some of them like went into pretty detailed descriptions. I think Hetzeldorfer, like I was able to really do that one because it's like and depict that Hetzeldorfer and Anastasius Rosenthal. Like I could like their depiction, like the way that it was described. I think they even mentioned what it was made of.
Well,
Like,
that's if I may.
yeah.
Okay, so Hetzeldorfer and these witnesses were made to describe in detail
Yeah.
how it was that Hetzeldorfer acted like a man. Their answers included the description and the use of an instrument and how it was made. Quote, with a red piece of leather at the front filled with cotton and a wooden stick stuck into it, and made a hole through the wooden stick, put a string through, and tied it round.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fairly specific.
It's super specific.
It's
Yes.
it's the same sort of and this is probably universal. This is not a queer thing, but that fear that you're going to die and somebody's going to get to the bottom drawer of the table near your bed
Right.
before some of the stories are just remarkable. There were so many, and in the new one, I loved Lamacho.
Oh, me too. Lamacho is one of my faves. Yeah.
Has this air about him of
Uh-huh.
defiance that is hysterical.
Oh,
And also your painting of that comes across the expression on Lamacho's face. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about this character.
yeah, Lamacho really resonated with me. I think just because I love the mischievousness of it. And I love that like Lamacho just confounded them. They like quite literally did not know what to do with Lamacho. Like they find, Lamacho's like dressed in male clothing in the church, like on it was Holy Monday, so like pretty big day. And like being mischievous, like then runs out with the Eucharist, and which is a no-no. And like they try to find, I love that they find them like blowing out the candles of the people in the processional. Like that's just, I can see that, just be like, man, what a turd. Like super funny, as my grandma would say. And yeah, and so then they capture Lamacho, and they're like, well, we got to get to the bottom of this. Like, there's this person, is it sacrilege? But they then find the contrary. Like, Lamacho was actually a super good Catholic and contributing to their community and going to mass all the time and devout. And then, part of, the community, like they learn that they're go by Lamacho. And I love that they were flummoxed when people said, well, they have inclinations towards women, and they're like, we don't know what that is. So that,
Yeah.
that's
What
not
now?
under our jurisdiction, so we should pass this on because it's clearly not sacrilege because this person's a good Catholic. So then, but there's something wrong, so we'll give it to the Spanish authorities, and then they're like, well, they didn't do anything. Like, we don't have a precedent for this. So like, what do we do? And so they just kept Lamacho. The sad part is they just kept Lamacho like in jail, like kind of languishing there for a while until they finally did make the decision a few years later to put them in a women's prison. But I just was like, wow, like to live that way where you're just so free and like just, yeah, like you did whatever. Yeah.
And that's a recurring problem, challenge for the penal system up to this day is
Yeah.
how do we incarcerate trans people? What is just to that individual, to the others in the prison? And it's still an ongoing fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could extend to not just prison, but to sports and to like, all of it, like our being for whatever reason, confuses people. So.
Yeah. And I think your books and your art contribute to a better understanding in that you establish that, people like us are not new.
Yeah.
We've been here forever in
Ever.
every kind of cultural context you can imagine.
Yeah.
Every different color, skin, and creed, and whatever. We've been here. It's just that nobody's been telling our stories up until now.
Yeah, and like this doesn't, I mean, the people in my books, like they're not even, it's just tip of the iceberg because I only was looking at people who were sort of living outside of their community's gender norms. So that left, like I then did not paint tons of other people who were just like, there were cultures that have 5, 6 genders there. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna, that doesn't fit into this criteria. So there's just like so many more people throughout history that, were accepted by their communities.
How do you find your Transqat?
The player at transqat.com.
TRANSQAT.com.
On YouTube,
Spotify,
Apple Podcasts,
Amazon Music.
and iHeartRadio.
Basically, anywhere that you find your podcasts.
What if I need one more place to listen?
You can also find us at WESU 88.1 FM, Middletown, Connecticut. The show is broadcast Tuesdays at 1 a.m. and is available online.
WESUFM /schedule.
Click the link to our show and put it in your ears.
That's a threat.
Definitely not a threat.
Hey, I hope we do this all day instead of working.
It's fine.
Yeah, in various ways, right? So, some indigenous cultures have a role for people like us, this is completely different from today, where your small rural communities were much more likely to say, that's just Tim.
Yeah,
We know Tim and his wife, and it really didn't matter because Tim farmed or ranched or whatever, and it was just like
contributing member of society, and like totally.
The other picture on the cover of Volume 2 is a very different tone than the mischief of Lamacho, and that's Kathleen.
Oh yeah.
What was Kathleen's goal?
So Kathleen Kathleen was one of two people I think I chose to paint from this big book that I came across called Sex Variants.
Oh, that title killed me. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sex Variants, a study of homosexual patterns.
yes. So that I've since done more research on that book. It started off as I want to say her name was Jan Gay. I think that's correct. I believe she started her research in Germany, kind of working with Hirschfeld and all of them,
Mm.
Weimar Republic and the Institute for Sexual Studies, and she wanted to just like put together a resource, or like she just wanted to gather our stories and show, very contemporary, like wanted to show that we existed and that we were like normal, quote unquote. And so she started this, but because she was a woman at the time, she couldn't get it published without having it attached to some sort of study and a male doctor. And so the full name, I have the book on the shelf back here, but so went to New York, eventually ended up in New York, and it became this study that they conducted in the 30s. They used much of her research to publish this, but they shifted it entirely. And her voice is really like, there's a little bit of a blurb about her in the beginning. It's like a 2-volume thing, and it became very different than what she wanted. It's not stories per se, it is, but it's like very medicalized. It's very institutionalized. It's seen and presented as a disorder. And so this study, it covers homosexual men, homosexual women, bisexual men, bisexual women, and oh my God, I'm just going to get the book. Hold on. Yeah, George Henry was the doctor that she paired up with. Case studies, okay. Homosexual men, homosexual women, bisexual, narcissistic. It's really interesting. Yes, narcissistic men and narcissistic women. So I don't know why that's lumped in there. It's really weird.
There was certainly a school of thought that sort of gender variance was based on, yeah, the narcissism. Instead of looking to the other
Right.
to complete you, that you were somehow looking inward. You were,
Oh.
invert, right? Was one
Yeah,
of the words they
invert. Right.
used to
That
describe.
makes sense now. Yeah. So like there's these charts that are in here,
Oh,
and
wow.
then there's drawings in the back, like gynecological drawings of pelvises and labia and nipples and all kinds of shit. It's nuts. So completely different than what, the original idea, but in it I found Frankie and Kathleen, their stories. So I definitely had to kind of read between the lines because it's very much I mean, they do tell their story. It is in their personal voice, but then at the end of each one, there's the doctor's voice in there pathologicalizing them. Yeah, I kind of like that one because at the end, like Kathleen ends up with like a partner. They seem to be going well. They've adopted a kid together and like living their life. It sort of shows the ups and downs of relationships in Kathleen's life. Like she was in kind of like a abusive relationship for a while where the partner was trying to force her to dress more feminine, and like I like hearing about their childhoods and things, and like I don't know, I thought they were also a graphic designer or made their money as it would have been, it's graphic designer now, but at that time they were called commercial artists. So making money that way that resonated with me. Yeah, I liked kind of pulling some quotes from there too, which was cool. Like I didn't get the opportunity to do that very often.
Yeah,
Frankie
good.
similarly, like Frankie was like, that was one part of Frankie's story, like the fact that they were still remained spiritual, I would say, over being religious. I think they were raised Baptist, but then I took a quote from them basically saying like, you know, I don't see that there's anything wrong with me because God made me this way.
Yes. There we go. So Frankie was raised Baptist, but converted to Catholicism after dating a Catholic girl. They went to church every Sunday stating, I don't think God would have made me queer if it wasn't right. I
Yeah,
love that quote.
that was cool. I was like, oh yeah, right on, Frankie.
Yeah. Hey, Frankie.
Yeah.
You are done with this project now, you think, after 2 volumes? You're moving on to other pastors?
Yeah, I kind of like I wanted to go with it as long as I felt like I could. I thought it would go. I mean, 15 years is a long time. I kind of thought I would just keep going and going, but I started to realize like I started to feel like quite physically in my body like I couldn't work in that style anymore. It was just too hard on my eyes and on my like shoulders and back and stuff. And then just like finding myself wanting to like do something different. And I still don't know what that is, but I just felt that it was time to like, I feel like I did it for 15 years. I put 2 books out there. I was like, this is good. Like I did good. Like I can stop now. Yeah.
Any chance of an exhibit somewhere? I would love to see the original artwork on these things.
Yeah, they were on exhibit in Denver. I can't remember if it's still up. It's up, I think, for a little while longer. It's in there. The ones that I have left are in Denver right now at the center. I want to say the Center for Visual Arts. It's part of a group show, but they were like, "We're going to give you your own room. We want all of them. Just send them." And I was like, "Okay." So, I can't remember when that comes down. The show is called Dance of Resistance, but
Mm.
it's been up since August, I think. Should come down pretty soon. And then after that, I'm not sure where they'll go next. But they are part of various collections. So here in Massachusetts, Wellesley, the Davis Museum has like 14 of them, and I think they're not on view, but you can request to see them in the prints and drawings room. And then various other places around have them. There's some at the Minnesota Museum of American Art, and there's some down in Florida at the Rollins, I think it's called the Rollins Museum. They changed their name.
Mm.
Cornell Fine Arts Museum or Rollins Museum. They kind of are hand in hand there for a little while. I don't know. But they're around.
This we started by saying that you were initially got into this sort of looking for yourself in history, and paths like that, particularly over a decade and a half, take
Yeah.
many unexpected turns. So what would you say you got out of this for yourself in the long run?
Yeah, I think just like being okay with who I am, like living how I want to live and not having to like not necessarily conform. I never did that, but like just being okay within myself to understand that like okay, there's a precedent for me. There's so many people that resonate with me and I found their lives in here and like this is like they they did this thing and they lived like this and they, we have all these things in common. And then I was like, wow, that was really helpful for me. I think also just kind of I think for a long time, like terminology is like always kind of an issue for me, like not figuring out like, okay, like I think because most of the time I'm like, well, am I this enough to choose that term, Like, and then I was like, who cares?
Yeah. Well, you got some pushback on your choice of the word butch.
Yeah, totally.
And I definitely wanted to ask you about that because I understood, but yeah, I got it.
That's good. It was a tough one because it is so specific to the lesbian community, and I knew that going in. And it's not a term that ever really, I don't know if I ever identified with the term. Like it was used on me, um, and for me, but it's not a term that ever really resonated. But I felt like it was a good term for this because like it, because it was so, well, in 2010, when I was when I was starting this, people were claiming it as its own gender. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then it also, it resonates with both like cisgender community. Like, I feel like I found it more like in that community, like people telling each other, oh, you're so butch, like meaning that they were just really strong. And then when I, started to spend more time around lesbians in my early 20s. Then I was like, oh, okay, it's used here too. And it felt like there was that nice overlap, like just meaning strong and brave. And it kind of resonated everywhere in terms of the meaning. It was pretty clear, and it's short and sweet. Like,
Right.
the people who were kind of upset by it were like, well, why can't it be more inclusive? Like, why not like gender variant heroes? And I was like, but that's too specific. Like, it's not necessary. It's also really wordy and long.
It takes up a lot of the cover.
It doesn't like sound great. Like, I just didn't come up with another term. And like, yeah, there was some pushback because like, sadly, there's a lot of transphobia in our community, and that was part of it. Like, people saying, well, like, that this just doesn't apply. Like, I don't know, but I still think like it was the right title. Like, I feel like it's more of an inclusive title, and it's specific to like who I was looking for.
I completely agree. It was the right title. The title raised for me an issue I don't think I had ever thought about before, and I'm a little hesitant to bring this up with you because I know I read about the pushback you got,
Yeah.
But I started wondering if butch is a term that might apply to me.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There's the whole issue of passing.
Uh-huh.
There's when I was young and I just used to pray nightly to wake up and have this problem be fixed.
Yeah.
I had images in my head of who I was or could be, but I'm not that now.
Yeah.
I look like this and I sound like this. And your books have got me really thinking about, well, not wanting to offend people aside, is butch a term that might apply to someone like me?
Yeah, of course. And that's why I like it too, is because butch can apply to all genders, to all sexualities. It just means like strong, like, and like powerful and like brave. It's not like, I just think there's sometimes, not all the time, but it's actually gotten more broad, I feel like, since I started it. Like, there's a great publication that's called Butch is Not a Dirty Word. And I think it's become even more inclusive since when I started. Like, I think a lot of people use the term, and that's what I like about it.
Tell folks where they can get these books.
Yeah, I think pretty much any bookstore. Like, I like to go to like local bookstores, and if it's not there, they can order it from MIT Press. And, it's on the bigger ones too, like Amazon and such.
I'm not saying I have a favorite, but the volume 1 has a ribbon, and that.
Yeah, totally. That's what I wanted from the get-go, because I really love volume 1's design, because like the one that I made myself was styled after like the book you would find in the pew, the Catholic Missal with the ribbon and like for hymns and such. And so that's what that one is going for, and I really like that. Yeah.
Anytime you can put a ribbon in a book, it makes it more important to me.
It really does.
Ria, thank you so much for this. I'm grateful to get to talk about these books and to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. This is nice.
If you've enjoyed today's conversation with Ria, and I hope you did, check out previous episodes with creators. Episode 98 was with Lucian Kegel, the artist and author of the graphic novel Spill the Tea. Episode 90 was with Logan Ward, the director of a documentary titled Remarkable, Voices from the Trans Community. And a favorite of mine, episode 46 was with Mauricio Pita and Christopher Canedo, the writer, director, star of the short film Safe Word. Next up on Transqat is part 2 of Voices from Pride, in which we discuss matters of great weight and import. Describe for our listeners what your t-shirt says.
It's got a big rainbow on it. It says, "I'm so gay, I rainbows."
Which got me wondering whether that would be more or less of a discomfort than the usual bowel movement.
Well, actually, I would think it would be a little bit more magical of a bowel movement. There should be some glitter and rainbows and, some fun.
I don't think I want glitter near that part of my body. But I'm thinking at the very least, if you rainbows, there wouldn't really be a need for toilet paper. I'm thinking that a rainbow would just kind of take care of itself.
Have you ever actually tried to chase a rainbow?
No.
So I have. There are pictures.
So are we talking like the movie Twister, where you're in a vehicle trying to...
Actually, I looked out the back window at my family's farm, and the rainbow was coming down in the back of the pasture, and I just said, I gotta go get it. And I just ran out the door in the pouring rain and was leaping through hay, and then when I got to where
It should have been.
Yes, it was now up in the next field.
This has been Transqat. I'm Clare McCarthy. Thank you for listening, and let's talk soon.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Clare McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Monies.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.